can I just say one thing firstly? I love the name Eat, Sleep, Boxing, Repeat.
ESBR boxing. We're back, myself and Paul Kelly. That means one thing and one thing only. We are here in preview mode. Delicious fight coming up in this preview, video first. Before we get to that, I'd like to say like and subscribe to the channel. Obviously, we've got all your boxing needs up and under one roof. Big fight breakdowns, previews, reviews, all that good stuff. So please like and subscribe to the channel, engage with the content, leave some comments, let us know, obviously, what you think, and that'll help inform our editorial processes going forward. But as I said, Paul, we are here. We are actually talking light heavyweight action today, WBO international title between Joshua Buatsi and Zach Parker. Not a bad fight, I think. First and foremost, we'll obviously unpick some of that and maybe look at the landscape of light heavy. Maybe talk about who you think might win this fight and what's next for both men. But Paul, first and foremost, let me just get your thoughts on this fight, please, and also a prediction.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Looking forward to this one. I think it's a decent fight, especially when you consider Joshua Buatsi's last fight was a grueling one against Callum Smith, an absolute humdinger of a fight. He obviously got beat, but he more than played his part in that fight. You look at Zach Parker, and since that John Ryder defeat, he has bounced back with a couple decent wins. You look at that Tyrone Zoiga one. He came off,
Mm.
got off the deck to win. He's had a couple others. He's won a couple by knockout, but I still have question marks over Zach Parker, if I'm 100% honest. Elliot, I think I'm backing Joshua Buatsi here. I think he'll want to make a statement. This is his first fight since signing with Frank Warren and Queensbury, I believe, as well. Um, Main event, obviously, some huge fights out there for the winner and domestically, but above domestic level, if that makes sense. And I think Joshua Buatsi, I'm actually going to say that he makes a bit of a statement here. Not a humongous puncher, Buatsi, but I'm backing Buatsi to stop Zach Parker. I think he's a level above him, and I think Joshua Buatsi will get Zach Parker out of there somewhere between maybe the sixth and ninth round, kind of just into the second half of the fight. That's where I'm at. I think it's a good fight. I can see why it makes sense for both men, but ultimately I think Joshua Buatsi is a slight level above Zach Parker, and we'll see that on fight night with a stoppage in his favor.
Yeah, you know what? I am. I'm not going to disagree with you. I think we are aligned on our prediction, and we think Joshua Buatsi is going to win. I think the only kind of separation I think I would make from it is that I think it might be points. To be honest with you, I think I might go Buatsi points. But I think you made that point. Obviously, the last fight I had against Callum Smith was a brutal fight. But I think actually it's a fight you want to see Joshua Buatsi in for a long time. You want to see him kind of tested, and we're kind of going, oh yeah, he's the next guy, he's the next guy. He's got all this potential, But he wasn't really fighting anyone that you could sit there and go, oh, actually, he's still sharp and still whatever. But we learnt a lot from that fight actually with Callum Smith, and I think Joshua Buatsi, yeah, he's been in with better names obviously than that Parker. I'm not fully convinced about Zach Parker, to be honest with you either. I think he's had some of those sort of inflated records for some time. One of those sort of like guys who turn up on a sort of a maybe maybe it was the other way round, with the way the world is with geopolitics. Like Zach Parker actually turn up on a Romanian show and he'll be the sort of 20-0 that no one's heard of over there that ends up getting stopped, and with a with a credible kind of record. But I think yeah, Buatsi's a level above. I think it's going to be points. I think it'll be quite convincing for Joshua Buatsi. And I think it'll be I think somewhere sort of like an 8-4 kind of 9-3 kind of difference. Actually, I think it'll be really really convincing performance from him. So yeah, we're aligned on who we think's to win there. But let's just have a look, I suppose, at the landscape at light heavyweight in Britain. We've obviously mentioned Callum Smith there. He's got that win over Buatsi, but there's other names that we've always ticked around here. Obviously, Anthony Yard, another one. Lyndon Arthur, to a degree, he's another sort of name that's often mentioned really around there as well. How do you rank Buatsi up at light heavyweight out of some of the British names?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to have him definitely top three. I think, judging by the fact that Callum Smith beat him and is a former world champion, obviously, albeit down at 168, I think you have to have Callum Smith at the number one and from UK shores. Then I think you can kind of make a case for a few different names. Like for me, I would have Buatsi second. I do believe that. I'd probably have him above Yard. I've always thought Buatsi Yard is a fight that I would favour Buatsi in. Then you've got your Anthony Yards of this world. Willie Hutchinson actually looked pretty good last time out. He's on the up. Suppose then you got your usual suspects. Craig Richards is around there. Lyndon Arthur. Obviously, Brad Ray now is actually the European champion at light heavyweight. So he's fighting Lyndon Arthur as well. So you look at that and think, you got to have those guys up there. But I think that I think it's fairly distinctive for me that you've got Smith, Buatsi, and then below that, or maybe Buatsi and Yard, and then below that, you've got that next crop of your Lyndon Arthurs, your Willie Hutchinsons, your Brad Rays, your Craig Richards, Dan Aziz a bit below that. That's kind of where I see it. So I would actually have Buatsi currently at number two from UK shores at £175. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I think you make some very clear points. I think, as much as it pains me to say, I'd probably have to have Callum Smith at number one in the British light heavies. I think he proved, he actually proved he had a lot left actually when he fought Buatsi last night. It was a grueling fight. I think for me, I was always slightly different to you. I always thought that if Yardy Buatsi fought, that Anthony Yard would actually have too much for Buatsi. But then I actually look at the shots that Buatsi took against Callum Smith and think actually maybe he'd handle that power. Maybe actually he would, and then he maybe could outpoint Anthony Yard. So I would have those two. I actually think the likes of Willie Hutchinson isn't potentially far behind though. I really do. I think that kind of gap is possibly narrower than I think we thought it might have been at one point. And we'll obviously touch on, some of the world title aspirations in a second. But I still feel like for me, Buatsi Yard, yeah, maybe interchangeable for me at two. I'm not going to argue with either person. I'd probably have Yard at two. You've said Buatsi at two. I can't criticise that and say that's the wrong decision. I think those two may be interchangeable at two, but Callum Smith at number one. But just talking a bit about world titles there, I'm going to pick up on that thread actually because obviously Callum Smith's been a world champion. Obviously, Yard's been Anthony Yard has he's been up there fighting world champions as well. For Buatsi, do you think he'll ever win a world title, or do you think he might just fall a bit short? Where do you think? Where do you see the landscape on him as a future world champion?
I mean, it's a tough one, isn't it? I hate to like sit
Mm.
in the fence, but it all depends on how the landscape is in the next few years. It all depends on if the Turbev retires, Bivol retires, moves up, whatever. It all depends on how the belts become fragmented then. Um, yeah, so I look at it and think I think he's capable. I think he's definitely capable, Joshua Buatsi. Um, have said this, I don't know how many times on countless videos. I've seen far worse world champions than Joshua Buatsi. You know, Charles Martin always springs to mind in the heavyweight division. As a former world heavyweight champion, you know, Joshua Buatsi, you'd say, is a better fighter in his division than Charles Martin is at heavyweight. So I think, you can make a case for him winning a world title, but it all depends on the landscape, on how it lies in the next few years. Part of me is leaning towards a no, but think, do you know what? I could see him getting a vacant title shot against a favourable name, and potentially getting it done. So yeah, do you know what? I do want to lean towards no, but then I'm also thinking, nah, it could just work out for him. The stars could align, and he could win a vacant title. Against someone that say fights for a WBO vacant title, and he's fighting someone who's high up in the WBO rankings who we've never really heard of. It's a favourable matchup. He could become world champion. For me, Joshua Buatsi. So yeah, I'm going to actually edge towards yes. And sorry to one name I did forget for your last question about the light heavyweights in Britain. Forgot to mention Ben Whitaker, of course, as well. Still a lot to prove, but I think in the next couple of years, could we see the likes of Ben Whitaker challenging the likes of Joshua Buatsi for that kind of top of the British throne? Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think you make some very good points there, which I'm going to agree with. The first one is that I think Buatsi's going to need possibly a favourable line in to fight for a world title to win one. I think if you look at it purely on merit, I think there are other names up there like heavy that I'd back him to beat. Obviously, Bivol's not the oldest. Benavidez is up there. Your man Diego Pacheco could be up there at some point as well. I think Callum Smith's already beaten him. Depends how much longer Callum Smith wants to fight and whether he obviously wants to win a world title. If he does win a world title, whether he would sort of want to hang around as well and defend it. So there's kind of these obstacles I think that are in the way of Joshua Buatsi, but he could do it if he gets a favourable kind of Warren-esque, vacant title that he can fight for. I think the Ben Whitaker one's interesting. I think Ben Whitaker, like you say, has got a lot to prove. I think he's almost got kind of 2, 3 years of probably learning before we even start talking about that. But by that point, Buatsi would be sort of 35 and 36. And you look at that and go, well, actually, what's the landscape look like then? Will Ben Whitaker have ascended to the point where Buatsi's kind of declined? So, yeah, I think that's actually a very, very good point. That gap will narrow as time goes on. So I actually think, I'm going to say no, I don't think Buatsi will ever become a world champion. But I agree with you in the fact that I think he could if he has a favourable line in. So yeah, I think we're kind of in agreement actually for some of this on this video, which I'm now going to summarise now and say that we are in agreement in that Buatsi will win this fight against that Parker. Guys, let us know in the comments whether you agree or disagree, as well as obviously how you think the landscape looks at like heavyweight, where you rate Buatsi, or even where you rate any other names there, Callum Smith, Willie Hudson, Ben Whitaker, and also whether you think Buatsi will win a world title. But that is sadly all we have time for, guys. Like and subscribe to the channel, as mentioned at the top of this video, and then join me in thanking you, but also in thanking Paul. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.
Cheers, mate. All the best.